This video on motivation and thesis writing. This video has come out of a webinar held by the School of Graduate Studies on a graduate student a writing cafe. And in that webinar, motivation came up as one of the big issues that participants felt like was something they were dealing with. So I've just put together 4 videos really quickly on how to understand motivation, procrastination, and what keeps us writing. Fair warning, I have 2 dogs in the room with me who may want to get up and do certain things. Okay, so let's move on. It's really important to understand procrastination and how procrastination works. And it has a lot to do with the environment that we work in. So writers in academic contexts write risky, complex documents in a hypercritical environment. And everything we write is critiqued, sometimes unfairly and harshly. And the only reason why I'm mentioning this is to explain how that builds into your experience of writing, and it feeds into whether or not you persevere when times get tough. And procrastination really is about protecting ourselves from a perceived negative outcome. We delay, postpone, or put off a task because we don't want to fail and we don't want the negative consequences that we know from experience we might get. There are a number of different ways of looking at procrastination, but let's just look at these 2. One is an individual viewpoint where we see ourselves as individuals who have some kind of psychological flaw, and that's why we procrastinate. It's an individual deficit, and we would say, oh, there's something wrong with me particularly. But if you look at it from a social viewpoint, if we look at writing in academic contexts and we say, okay, well, many people in these environments who write risky, complex, difficult documents procrastinate. Many people who write in a highly critical environment procrastinate. Then what we need to say to ourselves is, well, if everyone's doing this, there must be something about writing in this context that I need to understand, and that it's not something that is particular to me or what I perceive to be as my individual flaws. So I guess there would be some academic writers who don't procrastinate, but I would say on the whole, there are times when anybody who writes in this context does procrastinate. So those who don't procrastinate have developed strategies. And they do this because they understand how procrastination works, and they have a very flexible approach to writing. So instead of saying, well, this didn't work, so I'm giving up, they'll say, why didn't it work? What can I do differently? And they certainly don't aim for perfectionism, because that's a one-way ticket to procrastination. So let's have a quick look at how procrastination works. And those of you who have looked at my videos will know that I talk about this often. But the way it works is that we have a task ahead of us, which in our case, in academic writing, is often quite complex. We sit at that task and it affects our emotions, often negatively, which then leads to action. And that leads us to go and do something else. So here's an example. We sit down to write the literature review. We say, okay, in today's writing session, I'm going to write this literature review. We immediately feel overwhelmed because the task is almost impossible. So because we're feeling overwhelmed, we go and find something else to do. And that something else that we find to do provides us with more positive emotions, a sense of control, and a sense of satisfaction. So if you decide to clean the kitchen, you can see immediate results and you feel good. If you have something to eat, you feel good. If you, go on Facebook, scroll through Facebook, you feel good. Have a nap, you feel good. Whereas the writing task makes you feel bad, which is why you get up and go and do something else. So the way to overcome procrastination is to change that sequence of events. So to try and make the emotion that you feel positive, and then to make the task that you go and do something related to writing that will make you feel good again. So in this video, there are a number of different reasons why writers procrastinate, and I want to go through 4 main reasons. Don't want to do it, too much going on to do it, afraid to do it, and don't know how to do it. In this video, we're going to focus on don't want to do it, and this is when you really are not motivated at all to write. This is not an uncommon feeling especially with thesis writers. And the main reason for this is that you end up writing on a project over a very long period of time. And it doesn't matter how much you love that topic in the beginning, there will be times when you'll experience declining motivation and you won't want to look at it anymore. So let's have a look at the kind of continuum of motivation from not motivated on the one side, where you have absolutely no desire to write, and intrinsically motivated on the other side, where you are totally in love with this project and you just want to do it every single day. You are totally motivated. That's often where we locate our hobbies. We don't need to put any strategies in place because we just want to do it. And then somewhere in the middle is a combination of the two, where we are maybe not motivated to write but feel like we should write because of external factors. And these could be, this thesis is important for your future work, your family expectations, you want to earn a good salary in the future. So external motivations can be quite good in motivating you through whatever it is that you're doing. Just to expand on this a little bit and to explain how it's attached to emotions. So on the one end of the continuum, I'm not motivated to write. So this is where there's no purpose, no enticement, no rewards. No reward enticement is enough. And it's often tied to very negative emotions. Why should I write? I'm sure my chapters will be rejected. So there again is that past experience coming into play. The next move up in the continuum would be I'm motivated by someone or something outside of me to write. My family will be angry if I don't finish. Again, the emotions are negative. Now in the middle, I motivate myself, but the rewards are still coming from outside. I know I should finish this thesis. I want to, but it's really something outside of me that's pushing me. And this is where you get conflicting negative and positive emotions. The next one is I'm motivated because this is important to me. I want to finish because I have an identity at stake as an academic, as a biologist, or whatever discipline you're in, or as a researcher. So here you can see the emotions are much more positive. And then the intrinsic motivation is not an issue because I absolutely love doing this. Research is what I live for. And there again, the emotions are positive. So you're more likely to be demotivated if the emotions are negative, and more likely to be motivated if the emotions are positive. Just something else to think about is that when you're working on a very long project like this, your motivation will change over time, and it will change in terms of the task that you're doing as well. So at the beginning of your research project, you may be highly motivated, intrinsically motivated. Over the years, you might become ambivalent about it and then end up with being demotivated. But then as you get towards the end, your motivation might pick up again. And your motivation might change with different tasks. So if you're working on a conference paper where you know in a month's time you'll be presenting to an audience, your motivation for that will be high. Whereas a thesis chapter where you won't get feedback on it for months, your motivation may end up being quite low. Now, the less motivated we are, the more we need to bring in self-regulation. So we need to self-regulate our actions. And I like the term self-regulation because it has so much more agency than self-discipline. Self-discipline always seems to me to be like a criticism, And I think that we criticize ourselves enough, particularly when it comes to writing. So, self regulation is about very gently, kindly, compassionately pulling yourself back into line. So, here are the areas of self regulation that we need to think about as writers. So, one is about the contexts, the physical or social setting. Do we select, organize, and create effective writing settings? Now, sometimes, particularly at the moment, you can't, you have no control over this, but you can do the best that you can. Thinking about the context where you write best is a form of self regulation, and doing what you can to set up that context in a way that enables you to write is really important. Thinking about the task, so how big a task you set, how small, what you want to produce, whether or not you produce it, how you track that, and how you change your behavior based on your performance is all part of self regulation. So when you set a goal and you don't achieve it, do you throw your hands up and give up? Or do you say, okay, I didn't achieve it today, but tomorrow maybe I'll halve the goal and try again? That's really important in terms of self regulation. And then the personal kind of sphere, the emotions and beliefs that we have about writing, because our beliefs are very important. If we have a fixed mindset where we say, I've always been like this, I've always been a writer who does this, it's going to be very difficult to change your writing behaviors. Whereas a flexible mindset, engages more with, well, that didn't work today, but I'll try something different tomorrow. Or I used to be the kind of writer who did this, but I'm going to change that. So emotions and beliefs are really important, and that critical self-talk is the number one thing that stops us from writing. So self-reflection on how we go about writing and how much our emotions and beliefs impact on our writing is all part of self-regulation and is really important in in getting us motivated and keeping us in our writing seat. So motivation is often influenced by outcomes, and this is another really important thing to understand about thesis writing in particular. So if you clean your desk, you get immediate feedback, you see the results, you get instant gratification. And with that instant gratification, you feel good and you feel in control of that situation. Your desk is now clean. With thesis writing, we don't get that gratification or satisfaction because the delays are so long in finishing, in getting feedback, in getting any kind of gratification. So often with the feedback that you get, it's negative, 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 right until the end where it is positive. And that is very hard to take because you're not getting that positive feedback. So you don't get motivated to continue. Now, sometimes obviously you will get lots of positive feedback, and you may have a supervisor who's very good at encouraging you while at the same time giving you negative feedback, which you need to get the project finished. But generally, with thesis writing, we have delayed gratification, and that is very hard on motivation. So, what we have to do is we have to sustain the motivation in the absence of immediate outcomes. So, what does this all mean? It means the more motivated you are, the more you will self regulate and persevere when you hit blocks. And the less motivated you are, the more you will procrastinate. So you need to monitor your motivation and put strategies in place for self-regulation. And bearing in mind that this changes over the whole process. So this is what we have to do all the time as academic writers. We have to find the motivation. We have to look to our values and say, why did I want to do this in the first place? What is the benefits of finishing this? Why is this important to me? You have to sustain motivation through a whole bunch of strategies. You need to employ self-regulation strategies kindly and compassionately. and you need to persevere through those times when we get blocked. So here are a couple of strategies, and you'll hear me saying these all the time. The very first thing is you have to schedule writing time. You only know that you are avoiding writing if you've scheduled writing time and you don't turn up. There's always a good reason for not writing, and if you find that you are regularly finding good reasons not to write, you're avoiding it. Timed writing and free writing is such an important way to overcome procrastination and to find motivation again. So, timed writing is where you set a timer from 5 minutes to 25 minutes, and free writing is where you just write. You don't correct, you don't criticize yourself, you don't go back and cross out and rewrite. You just keep moving forward and you just write. Afterwards, you can go back, you can take what you want and throw the rest away. It's very important that the free writes are for your eyes only. They're not meant for your supervisor unless you feel like they are written well enough that you want to share it. Continually reflect on your motivation and self-regulation. So if you start a writing session and you really don't want to write, then write about why you don't want to write. What's happening with your motivation? Why have you lost it? Why are you finding it difficult to self-regulate? Write your way through that block. Engage in pre-writing activities, so notes from readings, notes from yourself, memos to yourself about your thoughts, sketch your research, um, brainstorm through mind maps or organic maps about what should go into this section or this chapter, or what you're thinking of doing in this section or chapter. Set short-term goals, words per day or sections per week. I find it difficult to do words per day. It's too constraining for me. But a section a week is flexible enough for me. If I know that I have to finish this, and this by the end of this week, I find that much more doable. I can fit it in and around all the other things that happen during the day or during the week. One little activity that really got me going when I was stuck, and it sounds quite silly, but for some reason it really worked, so I'm going to share it with you, is I drew a continuum on a piece of paper with inaction on the one end and action on the other end. And at the end of a writing session, I would just colour in different colours how much I thought I had done on that day. So a small amount for a small bit of writing, and then I would be generous when I did produce quite a bit of writing or when I achieved my goals. And it was just satisfying to see this continuum being coloured in every day. It felt like I was doing something. So you might find that helpful, very small activity, but it may work. The other thing to do is to build in rewards for achieving goals. So one of the things we tend to do is to punish ourselves about our writing. We're always saying, you're not doing enough, this is not good enough. How can you expect to finish if you're only writing short amounts a day? But if you set goals, even if they're small goals, and then you reward yourself by having a cup of coffee, phoning a friend and chatting, reading something light, going for a walk, doing some exercise, you will find that you're turning around your writing space from something that is always so negative to something that is quite positive. And as I showed you earlier, the more positive your emotions are, the more likely you are to stay in your writing seat. The last strategy is to work with a buddy, and this is to have a writing partner where you might email each other with your writing goals at the beginning of the day, and then check in either online or via Skype, and talk about what you achieved. Now you don't want it to spiral into a moan session. You want to make it into an accountability session. If I didn't produce, why not? And if I did produce, let's have a good laugh together and celebrate that. So when self-regulation or motivation, all these strategies that you've put in place, when they fail, it's because you've set unrealistic goals. So if you say to yourself, I'm going to write this literature review today, the chances are you are not going to do that. You're going to find something else to do. And then not keeping track of goals and performance. So if you set a goal, even if it's a small one, but then you never check it in some way, you never tick it off, cross it off the list, you'll find that those goals keep slipping. So you have to have some way of tracking your goals and your performance. Inappropriate standards. So if you say to yourself, I'm going to sit down today and I'm going to write this piece perfectly first time, the chances are you're going to get up and find something else to do. So allow yourself to write bad drafts, and you can fix them up later. Once you've got something done, it's much easier to go in and fix it up. So write messy drafts. If you sit down to write at your scheduled time and you immediately feel overwhelmed, then you're going to find yourself doing something else. So reduce the task until it's the smallest task where you sit down, you don't feel overwhelmed. So reduce it to the smallest task you can think of, even if it ends up being just writing one sentence, because the whole point is just to get started. Once you've got that one sentence down, you then write the next sentence. So small tasks. And if you reach that point where you feel like, okay, I can do this, that's the task you need to do for that day. When you're exhausted and you're tired, it's very difficult to stay motivated. So that's just a caveat that if you are writing when you're exhausted and your motivation is low, then that's probably why. As I mentioned before, a fixed mindset where you say it has to be done in this way. I have to write perfectly. I have to write at this desk. I have to write in this particular way. And then when it doesn't work, you give up. That's not going to work. You need to make your writing environment much more flexible and your approach to writing much more flexible. Okay, it didn't work today, or I've always written like this, but it's not working now. What can I do to change this? The number one thing that stops us from writing is that critical self talk, that internal critical voice that continually harangues us about our writing. When you're generating writing, you have to keep that voice quiet. Have lots of pre-writing activities, small pre-writing activities that help you organize, help you get whatever it is you're trying to write about down, even if it's in messy, bitty form. But the more you have of these pre-writing activities where you've thought things through in different ways, the easier it is to write sustained pieces. Those little bits and pieces become bigger pieces of writing. As I mentioned, set smallish goals, the smallest you need to keep you in that seat. Get writing down and then fix it up. Write horrible, messy, grammatically incorrect drafts and then edit them into shape. You don't have to show anyone the horrible drafts. That's just for you. That's for you to generate writing. And then, as I've said over and over again, celebrate goal achievements. Those of you who have seen my videos will know that there are lots of videos on various aspects of thesis writing and writing for publication. And there are quite a few on procrastination and writing, developing writing fluency. So have a look at that. And best of luck in keeping your motivation going. Thanks for watching. Bye.